I had another question for you about moving from SA to rep. Like now that you've been doing it for so long, have you found in your sales career that you've like leveraged SAs in a different way than other reps that haven't been an SA and haven't had that experience? And like, is there some keys that you found that like makes that engagement better or worse? Like, have you ever done one of the bad behaviors you used to hate that the reps did to you?
Let's see, SAs appreciate is, I think one thing that SAs hate is when a rep throws them under the bus, either sets them up with questions that they can't answer, puts them on tasks that they know they're set up to fail for, etc. And so before I do that, I will always check with them, say, hey, here's what I'm thinking, like I'd like to do. Is that something that you feel like we can be successful at? Is that something, before I just set it off? Because I know how, especially because I am a technical person and I know I still have an engineering degree. I have a personality where like if somebody gives me an uncompletable task or something where I know I'm set up to fail, I get this not anxiety is the wrong word, but I get like really angry and I feel that like pent up annoyance that builds up and then that turns into resent, and then you resent working with someone who does that to you. So I think like one thing for me is that before I just toss work at an SA, I always talk to them about like, does this make sense? Do you agree? Like, and good reps will do this anyways, but plenty of mediocre sales reps will just toss crap at a solutions architect, and it stinks, man. Know the feeling. You're set up to fail. It's busy work. And also, I'm empathetic for how much work they're doing for other salespeople that aren't me. So I'll always kind of talk to them about their workload. I mean, so that answers the question, but I think that's one thing that I do a lot.
You went at some point at Grafana Labs, you went into being a manager of sales reps, right? So how did you coach the sales reps that were working for you on this topic of working better with their SEs?
Especially when things aren't going well for a salesperson. So if they're not meeting their quota, let's just say. Oftentimes, the first finger they'll point is at the other person. I'm paired up with so and so is no good. It's toxic, but I mean, sometimes a person's right, but no good is a strong word. Sometimes maybe you have an experienced salesperson who, just because of like mappings, has to get paired up with an inexperienced sales engineer, something like that. One way that I would coach them, well, let me try to think of what like some specifics. Here's like a top one, right? Is meeting prep with an SE. So like a lot of times the content that a rep needs to prep is very much just like taking standard slides and modifying them a little bit. And then for an SE to put together good content, it needs to be very technical and customized for the customer. I would see lots of times on our team where a sales rep would tell an SE at 3 p.m. that like this needs to be good for the meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. and just assume that that was 90 minutes of work. Not that actually for the SE to get good research, they need to talk to 3 engineers in our company. Not that, hey, actually for them to really, sure, they can go get some slides, but if you really want that SE to be knowledgeable, they need to talk to the SE who's on the East Coast or who's in the other country, who's done the deal that's similar to this. And so throwing stuff at SE's last minute is something that I really like would come down on the reps on my team for. Sometimes you can't help it. Sometimes there's a big meeting for Thursday and boom, a last pre-meeting comes up on Wednesday. You can't help that. But there's plenty of times where a meeting is scheduled 2 weeks out and the rep won't do any prep until the day before. And then based on the rep's prep the day before, then they throw stuff at the SE. And now the SE's job is impacted because the rep can't prep in time. That was like a big pet peeve for mine. When you meet with a customer, I think this is something too that I've appreciated more as I've gotten older, is that time is so precious. Like when you get all the right people in a room, you may not get that opportunity again. And so for you to not put your best foot forward, it's inexcusable. I mean, it doesn't mean that bad meetings don't happen. Like it's okay to have a bad meeting, but to have a bad meeting for stuff that you could have easily corrected, like 10 minutes more prep or 30 minutes more prep, is inexcusable. And especially if you're not getting what you want out of your SE because as a rep, you haven't prepared that SE in time. That like so much about being a sales rep is making sure that you coordinate all of the things across a deal. And you can't just assume that your SE is your sidekick. That is like a partner in the process, and you need to set that person up to be successful. So if there's a specific thing you want, you need to make sure that you give that person the time to be successful rather than just, I'm going to run my own thing and that person's just going to follow my lead.
I think this is also more of an issue at a company like Grafana Labs where you have so many different products and such a wide variety of things that any particular customer might want to see on a given day or in a given meeting. as opposed to a company where like MongoDB was just a database, it's one product, this is what we're selling. You can use it in all these different ways, but it's not like 15 different things that we have on offer, right? Or like Elastic has so many different logging and metrics and this and that, right?
Yeah, Chad, you make a great point about that, right? With MongoDB having with Grafana Labs having such a broad set of offerings, meaning you don't know what you're going to get when you go to a customer. They could all of a sudden hit you about the UI for Grafana isn't super responsive, or it could be something's happening with the cloud service. We want to talk about open source Prometheus. We want to talk about incident response and management. All these things are different. And so that's the thing. You can't expect a sales engineer to be an expert in all of these things, especially if that person's only been at the company for like a year. And so they're going to have to talk to the right product expert, and a company that's global. Not everyone's going to be awake during the same hours. Like, you really need to make sure that you get the right amount of time so that you can get the right amount of information. Because the other thing I found too is that if it's the right meeting, sometimes it helps to just bring the actual engineer on the product to the meeting. And again, you can't do that for every meeting. It has to be the right meeting, but you can never do that if you have last minute prep. If it's a week in advance and the SE goes to talk to the engineer and says, hey, here's everything that we're dealing with. Here's how big the deal is for the company. Like, we can justify it. Then all of a sudden, hey, instead of me asking Chad, the engineer, to be on the call, I say like, hey, Chad, would you be comfortable actually being on that call? Because then I think we could be a lot more productive. Then we have time for you to go get the approval from your manager, for us to justify to the business, for the customer. Then you're on the meeting. Now the customer feels great because they feel like we're a super connected company because we actually have the product engineer on the call versus just the sales team. Like, there's a lot of good things that can happen if you give the SE more time.